psychologists have tried as much as possible to respond to those questions one-on-one. However, there are a few that I feel we can discuss on this broad platform, and everyone can learn a thing or two, you know, from the questions that we'll be treating today. So I'm going to go on a very quick breather. When I return, the show will continue. Please stay with me. You're welcome back. It's still the Well Child Show, brought to you by Global Child Health and Safety Initiative. My name is Kemak Onyenaucheya, your host. Now, today I'm going to open up the phone lines. So if you have a question or a comment, something you want us to talk about, feel free to send SMS only to 0808 33 05 051. I'll take the number again. 0808 33 05 051. Please send only SMS, and then I'll try as much as possible to take as many questions as I can from you, my precious viewers. Right, so we're going straight to the first question, and this question has, you know, a lot to do with a very important component of childhood, and it's about feeding. And this one says, "Dear Kemak, thank you for the great work you are doing with the Well Child Show. As a first-time mother of a 3-year-old, I find that meal times are my most challenging times. How can I get my child to cooperate with me during meal times?" Well, for I would say basically 9 out of 10 parents, meal times are usually a time of great stress and distress to both the child and the parents. Now, even from infancy, I remember at a point when I was in my early 20s, my elder brother asked a question, and that got me really thinking. And he said, why is it that whenever children are, you know, when it's time for children to eat, particularly infants that are still suckling on the breasts, they always cry and make a fuss. It's always such a dramatic scenario for most children. And that got me thinking. And as I advanced in my studies of childcare and growth and development, I began to come to, well, it's not really a conclusion, it's just still a hypothesis that I think, in my opinion, again, this is not proven by any research, but I would say probably the culture shock for young infants of transitioning from eating through the umbilical cord, that's the placenta of their mothers, to now having to eat through the mouth. That just might be a cultural shock and a reason why infants always make a fuss, you know, during meal times. And to this mother of this toddler it's a normal thing. Let me say that first. You are not dealing with anything out of the ordinary or out of the norm. Most toddlers usually make a fuss around meal times. And here is something I have found that kind of douses the tension and improves that period of interaction between parents or caregiver and children, because children must eat. Meal times are a very important aspect for the growth and development of the child. Now, this is what I advise. Rather than make mealtime another core chore of the day in the life of the child, why not build some interesting activity around mealtime? That's one. You know that there's a way you can approach certain vital aspects of life that make it seem appealing to the individual. And there are ways you can approach those vital aspects of life that make it seem like a chore, something that is boring, that is rhetoric. So there are, you know, creative ways that you can go about mealtime with your toddler particularly. And here's another thing I like to, you know, advise or suggest. Why not co-opt your toddler into decision making concerning their mealtime? For example, when it's time for your toddler to have lunch, before that particular time when your toddler is supposed to have lunch, begin to engage your toddler in discussions around meal times, in discussions around lunch, in discussions around the importance of meals. There are lots of resources on the internet that bring up, that have, a lot of playful and interesting, educating information that are quite, appealing to children surrounding the importance of meals, the types of meals, the classes of meals, and why children should, have a balanced diet. Now, that aside, you can also involve your toddler in decision making concerning their meals. Now, I'm not saying you should absolutely allow your toddler to decide what they would eat, because most of the time, if you give that leverage to children, they would lean more towards unhealthy junk food and sweets. What I'm saying is this: when it's time for a meal, rather than say to your toddler, go get your plate or get your chair or put your table aside, you can say to them, hey, Joy, would you like to use the blue or the red plate for your lunch? Most of the time, as a matter of fact, 10 out of 10 times, the toddler will give you a response: oh, I'd rather use the blue plate. In that sense, what you have done, you have gotten that toddler to buy into their participation in their meal time. And this is the way it works. By psychology, the moment a child engages anything in particular, there's a way the brain of children work. They like to see things through to a logical conclusion. So when you have engaged your child in making a decision to use a particular plate or a spoon to engage or to have lunch, definitely that child would want to see through the whole process of having lunch. In that sense, and children are creatures of integrity, children are creatures of moral idealism. Now, having bought your child's participation in their lunch, chances are it will be less likely that they would create a scene or, throw tantrums or refuse to have lunch. Because in some subtle way, you have gotten them to buy into the entire process of their having lunch. So in a nutshell, you can make it more communicative, you can make it more fun, you can take the time to engage your child in the decision-making process during their meal times. Of course, I'm not saying this has to be, the way it has to be all the time, but the bottom line is we're trying to reduce frustration and improve a seamless communication and interaction between parents and children during meal times. So thank you, Divine from England, for that question, and I hope I've been able to proffer some solution. Now, moving on to the next question. This is from Miriam from Kogi State. She says, hello, Well Child Show. My name is Miriam from Kogi State. My question is on discipline. What is discipline, and what is the appropriate ways to employ discipline? Now, this is a really important question, because there's so many, there's a lot of variance, particularly in parenting style and upbringing culture, on what discipline actually is. And a lot of times, parents or adults, teachers, caregivers are not able to draw the line between employing or applying discipline in their interaction with children and expressing their frustration. It's a very thin line. But I want to say discipline can be defined or looked at as a means of helping children understand the difference between right and wrong. It can also be a means of helping children understand the universal law of cause and effect. In essence, you're trying to help your children come to an understanding that every action in life has consequences, and those consequences can either be positive or negative, or be appealing to you as an individual or not appealing, and all of this is based on the action itself. Of course, for you physicists will tell you about Newton's second or third law, I'm not exactly sure, but that to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Now, where I try to get parents, adults and caregivers to draw a very thick line is when it comes to them employing discipline in raising or interacting with children as a means of assuaging their personal anger or frustration at the things the child has done, whether wrong or right. That is not an aim or a purpose of discipline. As a parent, the aim or the actual reason why you employ discipline in upbringing of your children is not for you to express your frustrations at the things the child has done. And I'm going to explain this. Now, the reason why I believe nature put us in family units and we didn't just pop up, on earth, is because the younger members of a particular species would have to depend on the hindsight and the experience of older members of their species for direction in life and in their growth. This is why I believe human beings come to the world as babies through families in setups where they have to be nurtured and corrected. Now, one of the basic, characteristics or experience of childhood is that the child will always make mistakes. And that's the reason why the child is a child. There's every tendency that the child who lacks a lot of experience, who lacks a lot of knowledge, who has very little hindsight and also limited foresight would make decisions that you as an adult or a more experienced member of that species, standing on or leveraging on your hindsight and your experience, know to be wrong. Now, the very reason why that child is in your life is for you to provide direction, for you to afford the child some leverage with your experience. That's the whole essence of parenting, if you think about it. To direct children, to show them the right path, to help them walk a path that in your experience or your knowledge, based on your hindsight, your foresight, will turn out better life outcomes for them. Now, when these children make these mistakes for which they are known as children, I think it's a form of hypocrisy when adults get so bitter and so enraged by the mistakes that children make. If children were not built, if children were built with a perfect knowledge of life and how life should go and know the right things to do all the time, if children were built that way, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and socially, there will be no need for adults or parenting in their life. So for every time you want to employ discipline in interacting with your child, ask yourself the question, take a breather, and ask yourself the question, why has this child done this thing? If you can come to a conclusion that this is a child and he or she has some level of immaturity and the lack of knowledge in making the best life decisions, and then you ask yourself again, why am I in the life of this child as a parent, a teacher, a guardian, caregiver, whatever, and you can come to the conclusion that the reason I am in the life of this child is to help guide them and provide direction, then you will understand and have a better form of choosing for the form of discipline to employ. This is key. Parents and caregivers need to understand this. Children are children because they are immature, because they don't have a lot of life experience, they are prone to making mistakes. That is why they are called children, and that's the reason why you are in their lives, to help correct those mistakes and direct them appropriately. Now I'm going to take the next question, which is quite similar to this particular question on discipline, and it says, "Hi Kemak, John here from Abuja. Why is there so much hoopla around corporal punishment? That's corporal punishment. That's the use of physical force to exert discipline by caning or spanking children. And he goes on to say, in our days, our parents flogged us mercilessly. Our parents flogged most of us mercilessly, and we turned out fine. Right. Now, this is a very huge question that if we would need an entire episode to deal with, but I'm just going to try very quickly with my experience as a child psychologist and a child care professional to answer this question. Corporal punishment, like I said earlier, is the use of physical force as a means of discipline on children. You could either use the cane or an object to inflict physical pain, or use of physical force using an object to as a form of discipline on the child. Now the question is this: if you ask yourself and take, really reflect on what I'm about to say, you would understand that for the most part, at the risk of being too exaggerating the obvious, 80% of the time when parents flog their children or use corporal punishment on the children, it is focused on exerting the anger, the irritation, and the frustration of the parents on the child. And that's why, the level to which the parent is consumed with anger is a level at which they lash out at the child with corporal punishment. Now, this is my personal opinion. I personally believe that corporal punishment is not an effective way of employing discipline on children. Now, hold it a second. I know a lot of us African parents are about to, you all are daggers drawn. But listen and let me explain. In human culture, what differentiates the human being from every other lower animal is the power of words that we have. And research has shown that the most long-lasting, sustainable way of sorting through differences and arriving at a compromise is the use of words and dialogue. And I also found, in working with families and dealing with children and trying to help parents understand the best ways by which they can communicate and interact with their children, a lot of times parents and adults in the lives of children undermine the mental, emotional, and psychological capacities of children. For a lot of us, we feel this child will not understand the intensity of what he or she has done except I use physical force. In most cases, that is not so. Now, let's take a look at our environment or our particular culture in Africa and in Nigeria. As adults, young people in my generation, for the most part, we have severe difficulty dialoguing in the face of a disagreement. Most of us are built to either fight or flight as adults. A lot of us who lean towards the angle of, those who we refer to as calm, as not problematic, are those who flight whenever there's a need for confrontation. And for those of us who lean towards the framework of people who we refer to as brash, as very forceful, as pushful, as bullying, are those who are prone to fight in the face of confrontation. Now, these two extreme emotions are not the best way to handle confrontation or disagreements on any issue. And as a matter of fact, as a human being or as a living object in nature, you must be confronted with issues that are not palatable with you. So the question is, how do you walk around those issues to arrive at a compromise and have your peace of mind, your zen, and maintain cordial relationship with those whom you're having those disagreements with? our, A-leaf response is dependent to a large extent on the kind of upbringing that we had. For a lot of African parents and adults, when there's a reason for confrontation or your child does something you don't like, and then you just apply brute force on the child, you are actually subconsciously teaching the child that the way to deal with situations or issues that are not palatable with you is the use of brute force. And maybe this is the reason why we have a generation of adults who really do not care for the mental health and the well-being of their fellow human being, who would go all out and do whatever it takes to have their own particular way. So these are the issues. You may look at yourself and say, yeah, my parents flogged me, and I'm not saying it is absolutely wrong to apply corporal punishment on a child, but the question is, to what extent? Where do we draw the line? Dialogue with your child. Remember what I said at the beginning. Discipline is the means through which you help a child understand the difference between right and wrong. Now, a child might do something that works on your emotions and you get furious. Please control yourself and have a conversation with that child. I personally believe that the most sustainable way of passing across information or employing discipline with your children is the use of the voice. Have a dialogue with your child and help them to understand what it is you're trying to help them understand. And besides, when you have that conversation with your child, apart from helping to sort out that immediate problem or the cause for conflict with the child, you are also teaching your child certain life skills that would help them be more adaptable adults, that will help them understand that dialogue, no matter how tough or convoluted the issue is, you can sit it out with whoever it is you're having that confrontation with and dialogue through. This is my personal opinion. And this is what I say generally with the use of corporal punishment. Like I said before, we find that when parents, teachers, or adults who are grooming children employ corporal punishment, most times it's because the emotions of those adults have been so wound up, they are so angry, upset, or irritated, and they want to express that anger and that irritation at that point. But if we come back to the question of what exactly is discipline and why do we employ discipline, remember, it's not for you, the adult, to express your anger or your irritation. It is to help the child understand the difference between right and wrong. And this is why I tell people, when you are angry, please do not flog. When you are upset, when your emotions are heightened, when you're highly irritated at what a child has done, that is the wrong time to employ corporal punishment. And I say this a lot to adults that I consult with. Even when you are bent on employing corporal punishment, it's always important that you talk to the child and make them understand the reason why you are applying corporal punishment. This gives a lot of clarity to the child. It may, some of these things I'm saying may appear to be far-flung. They may appear to be not practical. But the truth is, every human being has the power to control only one person, and that's themselves. And I personally believe that no matter how wound up your emotions are, you have the power to control yourself and to do the right thing. Now we're almost out of time, but I'm going to quickly take some points that I've written down here. And the first point says dialogue with your children. Have open-ended communication with your children. Help them to understand what it is you want them to understand, and then give them the room to express themselves. You see, discipline is a two-way communication or a multi-way communication. It's not about you drumming down what you feel is best to the child, but also giving the child the opportunity to talk back to you so that you have an understanding of their own perspective, and then you're able to appropriately merge, all angles of the discourse and direct your child properly. And then secondly, the second point that I want to leave with you today is stop underrating the mental capacities of your children. I tell you, children are a lot more mentally sound than we give them credit. And number three, resist the urge to stomp down on children with your power. Let them have the use of their voice. Cultivate a sort of relationship and interaction with your child that allows for open communication without fear. And finally, you lose no power by helping your child understand the process. I'll say that again. As a parent, as a teacher, as a guardian or childcare professional, you lose no power by helping your child understand the process through dialogue. I want to thank you so much for being a part of the show today, but of course I will not let you go without calling and asking for your support. Corporate organization, child-friendly institutions, please partner with us on the Well Child Show. Help us to keep this show on the air. And I must use this opportunity to supremely appreciate the president of Galaxy Television, Chief Steve Ojo. He's been such a wonderful person. He has a real heart for the development of society, and that's why he has partnered with us to put this show on the air. Help us to do more. Come on board. The numbers showing on your screen are the numbers of the producers of the show: 0808 3305051. Partner with us on the Well Child Show and help us send this message to the ends of the earth, literally. The conversation continues across all our social media platforms: on Instagram at Global Child Health and at the Well Child Show. To view this and previous episodes of the show, you can hook up on YouTube on Well Child TV and have a plethora of topics that you can learn from. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today. And like I always say, I need you to remember, child health and safety is everybody's business. Goodbye, and I'll see you again, same time, same station, next week. God bless you. Hello and welcome